Guten Tag, APUSH. We have a new video today. It's the Bee's Knees by the Big Cheese himself, Mr. Linegar. Let's make history today as we jaw over Unit 3, Day 2. But first, let's do our daily punishment. My friend drove his expensive car into a tree and found out how his Mercedes-Benz Key terms for today are Marbury v. Madison, John Marshall, Aaron Burr, the Essex Junta, the Embargo Act, the Non-Intercourse Act, Macon's Bill No. 2, Tecumseh, the Battle of Tippecanoe, and Warhawks. We're going to go over John Marshall and the Supreme Court, Thomas Jefferson's foreign policy, especially during his second term, and James Madison's early presidency, events leading up to the War of 1812. So you should know about Marbury v. Madison. Marbury v. Madison is the first big Supreme Court case in American history, and it's going to be the thing that leads to judicial review. Here's the background information for the case that you need to understand. The Federalists lose the election of 1800, and they're going to lose the executive branch, and they lose Congress. In between the election and when the new president is sworn in is something called the lame duck period, when the old Congress is still in office, and they're just waiting to get voted out of office. So during the lame duck period, Congress is going to pass the Judiciary Act of 1801. It was meant to increase the number of judiciary appointments, basically stack the judiciary branch with Federalist appointments, so the Federalists will still have one branch of government. They're going to try to create 10 new districts and many new judgeships. These are sometimes called the midnight judges because they're appointed in the last minute. They're appointed in the last minute when the Federalists are leaving office. John Adams, Secretary of State, John Adams, Secretary of State, John Marshall, was actually signing the judgeship appointments all the way until the very last minute. What's going to happen is the Secretary of State, Marshall, wasn't able to sign every single name, so some of the names were never. Some of the judges were never signed. Were never signed by the Secretary of State. So when Thomas Jefferson became president, his Secretary of State, James Madison, is going to not give the commissions for the ones that weren't signed. He's going to refuse to deliver them. One of the judges whose name was not signed before Adams ran out of office was James Marbury. He's going to sue the Secretary of State, James Madison, that he must be appointed as a justice. John Marshall, who is now a Supreme Court justice, he's the Chief Justice, he's going to handle this case. This is actually super kind of unethical. Since he was involved in this case, he should have excused himself. But Marshall was a cousin of Jefferson, and he hated Jefferson. He was also a Federalist. So what he's going to do is he's going to do some kind of really ironic things here. Marshall realized at this point the Supreme Court had no authority. So if he ruled against Jefferson, Jefferson would just ignore it. So what Marshall wanted to do was he wanted to strengthen the power of the judiciary branch, but not just be completely ignored. So what he's going to rule here is he's going to rule that the Judiciary Act of 1801 was unconstitutional. So Jefferson didn't have to follow it because the whole act the Federalists passed was unconstitutional anyway. The reason this is important because it's kind of confusing. He ruled against a Federalist law. By him ruling against a Federalist law, it came up the idea of judicial review, that the Supreme Court has a power of ruling congressional laws unconstitutional. So this strengthened the power of the judiciary. When judicial review deems a law unconstitutional, thou shalt not pass the line of sand. Okay. Oh, God, guys. Okay. So Aaron Burr was pretty salty at Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton and Burr were originally friends. The musical got that right, kind of. Or they were at least acquaintances. As you remember, in the election of 1800, Hamilton's going to support Jefferson over Burr. Burr's going to try to switch parties, and he's going to try to run as a governor for New York. And Hamilton will oppose him again because he just thinks Burr is completely unethical and has no set political beliefs. That was the one really good thing the musical really got right. about Burr. Burr is going to lose that election, and he's going to blame Hamilton for his failed political career. He's going to challenge Alexander Hamilton to a duel. They will fight. Hamilton is going to shoot in the air. When you shoot in the air in a duel, that's an honorable thing you do. That's a sign that I'm not going to try to hurt you or kill you. And the other person, if they have any honor at all, just one shred of honor, they would also shoot in the air. So Hamilton shoots in the air because he's an honorable person, and Burr just shoots him and kills him. Okay. After this, Burr will be during this time, Burr was meeting secretly with some of the more extreme Federalists that hated Jefferson. They were talking about seceding from New England and forming their own country. Hamilton was a nationalist. He didn't like this. That's one of the reasons that Burr got mad at him. After this, Burr's going to be hated in the North and the South now. He's going to be hated in the North because they killed the great one, Alexander Hamilton. He's eventually going to try to separate the Louisiana Purchase area and form their own country. He wants to give it to Spain so they can make him a governor or a king of the Louisiana land. He's going to be tried for treason. He's going to be found not guilty because the person hearing the trial was John Marshall. And Jefferson hated Aaron Burr. Jefferson didn't like Hamilton, but he hated Aaron Burr, as he should. And Marshall found Burr not guilty just kind of to troll with Jefferson. During this time, America is going to try to remain neutral. Britain and France were going to war again in the Napoleonic Wars. This is going to negatively affect the U.S. economy. The British will pass something called the Orders in Council, which says that the ports of Europe, the ports are closed unless the trade vessels first stop in the British port. So American ships need to first stop in British ports, otherwise British ships will try to seize them and do impressment. Jefferson is going to try to do something called peaceful coercion. He doesn't want to go to war, but he's going to try to do some economic boycotts to try to pressure the British and the French to respect American neutrality, because both the British and the French are seizing American ships. And by 1808, Jefferson is going to follow Washington's precedent and leave the presidency. Thank God. But let's talk lastly about a couple of things Jefferson does. In 1807, he passed the Embargo Act. This prohibited export of all goods. This is going to say where America will not trade with any country at all, because we were upset that Britain and France were seizing our ships. This is going to really infuriate New England and the North because they make a lot of their money from trade. Jefferson thought by doing the Embargo Act, all the world would be hurt by America not trading with them. But we're a tiny country at this time. We're a third world country. So nobody really cares that we did the Embargo Act. Congress will repeal this act in 1809. Next, they do the Non-Intercourse Act. This opened up trade to every country but Britain and France. That'll show them. But it really doesn't show them because they don't care. Here's a famous political cartoon over the Embargo Act. Dang it, he nicked them. Oh, this cursed Ogambi, which is backwards for embargo. You see that they're smuggling anyway to the British. James Madison is going to inherit the problems that Jefferson made as president between Britain and France. Madison was faced kind of with an inevitability of war between either France or Britain. He's going to pass a not very well thought out law called Macon's Bill No. 2. Macon's Bill No. 2 promised that America would trade with whichever country promised not to attack American ships between Britain and France. So if Britain promises not to attack American ships, America will trade with Britain and we won't trade with France. If France promises not to attack American ships, we'll trade with France and we will stop trading with Britain. France is going to agree first. This is basically an economic declaration of war because now we're only not trading with one country. Madison was a strict constructionist. Remember, originally he was a strong nationalist in the Federalist Convention, in the Constitutional Convention. But by the time he was in Congress and became president, he kind of betrayed all of his political beliefs, and now he's a strict constructionist. So he's going to not recharter the First National bus. The First National Bank only lasted for 20 years, and he's going to get rid of it. So now America is about to go to war with Britain. We don't have any money. Oh, no. Jefferson got rid of our army and our navy. Oh, no. And, guys, I don't think this is going to be good. And we're going to have death. Not only will we go to war with Britain, there will be a war with Native Americans. Tecumseh and his Shawnee brother, they're both Shawnee, Teknawa, who is called the Prophet, are going to try to lead a Native American alliance. The Prophet is going to push for Native Americans to give up their land for tribunal land ownership, get rid of Western clothing, get rid of alcohol. They're going to try to push the Americans out of the Louisiana area. The governor of Indiana, William Henry Harrison, is going to fight the Native Americans in the Battle of Tippecanoe, and he's going to defeat them. This is where he defeats Tecumseh, the Prophet. This is going to make Harrison a hero, Native American war hero, fighting the Native Americans. He'll also become president later on. So, going back to America and our problems with Britain, the middle ground had led to America nowhere. None of our Embargo Act, non-intercourse, none of it really did anything. So in 1812, America will declare war on Great Britain. This war will split along regional and political lines. So it's not just Federalists versus Democratic Republicans. A lot of Democratic Republicans who were in the North voted against this war. You should know this one phrase, however. There was a younger generation of Americans who were born during the American Revolution and were young kids then. They supported war with England. They wanted to get cheap land in Canada. They wanted to expand, so kind of manifest destiny. They were kind of nationalistic. They wanted to expand America northward, and they're going to push for an aggressive foreign policy. And the two big leaders of the war hawks were Henry Clay, Speaker of the House at this time, and John C. Calhoun, who was an extreme nationalist during this time. And these two things are going to lead us to the War of 1812, these couple of things. So next class we'll be talking about the War of 1812, guys. But that is all I have for you for today. Until next time, deuces, deuces, yeah.